So we have started to talk about the causes of shamatha, and we have connected our explanation of the causes of shamatha with the explanation of actually the course of samatha. How do we proceed to attain shamatha? The causes cannot be separated from the effect. And the causes we have mentioned of shamatha actually start when the mind is turned inside. That is why the first stage of samatha in the northern tradition is called stapayati, establishing, which Xuanzang very skillfully translates as neju, dwelling inside. In order to learn shamatha, we have to make the mind dwell inside, in its own house. And the traditional way to do that is the meditation on breath. When we watch the breath, the mind turns inside. Xin Hui Nei Zhuan. If we use the mind watching the outer objects, then we cannot avoid the monkey mind. And training in shamatha actually means taming the monkey mind. When the monkey becomes trained, he can be very useful. When the monkey is not trained, he can only give us trouble. And the more we practice meditation, the more we realize we all have a monkey inside. Now, this the same monkey can become Hanuman, becomes savior of the Xuanzang in the Chinese novel Hozi. Without the monkey, the Xuanzang would never come to India. And so the monkey enabled Xuanzang to achieve what he has achieved. And so if we train the monkey, he can do the great service for us and for the all sentient beings. So this is the aim of shamatha. Now, in order to turn the mind inside, then the best method is to watch the breath. And the breath is very convenient because anytime it's always with us. We don't need to, like the blue color, fix the mind outside to bring it inside. When we watch the breath, immediately the monkey mind looks inside. When it looks inside, it can develop wisdom in the Buddhist sense. The wisdom in the Buddhist sense is based on the mind looking inside. Now, the approach of science is very different. So here the science and Buddhism actually cannot really meet, very difficult to meet. The science won't believe in these deep states of consciousness unless it has tested them. But it can only test them very superficially, no way to test them in deep. So now they are experimenting with electrodes, the mind. We can see how the mind in the shamatha, how it stops vibrating, and its line is non-changing. So the scientific community starts to believe that the shamatha is really very useful. But the depths of shamatha we can only understand in our own mind. We cannot understand by these experiments of electrode. So, in order to turn the mind inside, then anywhere you can focus on the breath, it's okay for the very beginners. The most useful place would be around the nostrils, because this is where the bulk of the breath is entering our body. So we have explained that according to Buddhist philosophy, all we experience through the touch. And we have explained we touch the breath by the body and by the mind. When we develop concentration, the bodily touch becomes weaker and weaker, and the mental touch gets a prominence. According to the teachings of the Abhidharma, the touch of the five senses is gross. It is compared to the two rams fighting with their horns. Jiao, yang jiao, ku, ku. Very gross. The touch of mind with mental object is compared to two balls of cotton which are rubbing together. So that is why the mental touch can develop the subtle mind. The touch of the five senses has no such ability to do, unless the monkey mind is in full control. We have explained that the Buddha, in many different sutras, by different skillful means, explained the process of meditation as the process of sublimation of the mind. So we go through these different stages of sublimation of the mind until we can discover the most sublime object, which is not real object, and that is the object of liberation. In Buddhism we call it nirvana. this is beyond, actually a touch beyond the touch. Perception beyond perception, feeling beyond feeling. And when we have experienced this kind of a touch, it will reform our way of seeing completely. So then it becomes quite easy to succeed in vipassana and to let the mind be pure on all occasions. Now, this is the general scheme. Now we are interested in the Bodhisattva path, so the Bodhisattva path is a path of non-duality. So we cannot differentiate between nirvana and samsara. So we can only remain in this touch beyond touch when we have completed all the virtues of the Buddha. So this is the difference, but the scheme is the same. We have to ourselves experience the touch beyond the touch and remain in this touch beyond the touch. Then we will not be disturbed. When we have no more disturbance, we become the Siddhas, Chenchuju. So the first step is to turn the mind inside and learn to dwell inside. And for that, as we have said, the breath is ideal object. When we have a firm perception of the in-breath and out-breath, our mind will be appeased. When this experience becomes very clear and a habit, so whenever we have states of agitation due to anger or due to deep attachment, we pay attention to the breath and they will be reduced because of our habit of meditating on the breath. So for that very reason, because the breath is always with us, it is very advantageous to learn meditation on the breath. In the Buddhist tradition, the meditation on the breath is the base for the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And the 4 foundations of mindfulness is a base for the 37 factors of enlightenment, without which we cannot realize. No matter whether we train in the path of the disciples or in the path of the bodhisattvas, without the 37 factors of enlightenment, 37 causes of enlightenment, we remain in the dark. And to cultivate the 37 causes of enlightenment, we have to keep the mind inside. We have to practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Now, when we keep the mind inside, the obstacles will become clear. When we keep the mind outside, the obstacles will not be clear, so we cannot enter deeply into the process of purification. Now, all religions actually boil to the same. Finally, the object of religion is the purification of the mind. There is no other object. Now, in Buddhism, it is very much emphasized that for the impurity of our mind, we ourselves are responsible. For the purity of our mind, we ourselves are responsible. We have to take a full responsibility for our mind. And we do it by turning inside. Even if you meditate on all these yidams, all these different bodhisattvas, Buddhas, it is also to turn the mind inside. This is where the wisdom can crystallize. Otherwise, no wisdom will crystallize. Now, when we turn the mind inside, the obstacles become clear. If we don't turn the mind inside, the obstacles will not be clear. Now, in the Mahayana tradition, in the tradition of the path of Bodhisattva, when we turn the mind inside with the purpose of appeasing the mind, we will face 5 kinds of obstacles. They are called dosha. Kosha, which means actually, literally, mistake. Dosha means mistake. Kosha means mistake. Why? We have explained, especially in the path of the Bodhisattva, we emphasize that the nature of the mind is pure. The defilements are, so to say, the guests to our mind. And we have to bring this awareness into our mind, then we can check the mistakes. And we have to live with this awareness. Always train to keep this awareness with us. We do not want to be mistaken. If we are mistaken, we are suffering. But we always make mistakes. The attitude of the Bodhisattva is not to remove completely all mistakes, but to learn from the mistakes. Because our aim is not to leave samsara, but to fully penetrate the nature of samsara. Now, according to the Yogacara Bhumishastra Yichye Tilun, the meditation teachers in Mahayana tradition summarize these mistakes as 5 or 6, sometimes 5, sometimes 6. Now, what are these mistakes? We should be very clear about this. The first mistake is called kausidyam, which in Chinese they translate as xie tai. The kausidyam in your book is translated as laziness. But maybe laziness is not the best translation. Actually, kausidyam has a very wide scope of meaning. The root of kausidyam is from ku, which means in Sanskrit bad. So actually, when we let all the bad influences control our mind, we are lazy, we are negligent, we are in a bad state, we are mistaken. That is laziness. When we let the anger control our mind, we are lazy, we are negligent, we are in a bad state, we are in a bad conditioning, we are, so to say, to be pitied by the sages who have a clear mind. So this is the first mistake, which is the base of all the other mistakes. Now, when we deal with this negligence or laziness, or however you translate it, xie tai, what will happen? Mindfulness will happen. Mindfulness of what? Mindfulness of course, of the mind and mental factors. Is mind wholesome? Is it unwholesome? It is mindfulness which can distinguish between wholesome state of mind and unwholesome state of mind. If we don't have mindfulness, we do not know what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. So we are in trouble. So, because of mindfulness, all of the wholesome states of mind can crystallize. Without mindfulness, we are lost. In the scriptures of Mahayana, this mindfulness is on the base of Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, Chieshen Mijing. Very often translated and understood as being mindful of the instructions, what we should do and what we should not do. Now, Venerable Asanga explained this kind of mindfulness in the Shamatha aspect of mindfulness, Shamatha aspect of not forgetting the instructions, as remembering what I have taught you, that grossness is suffering and subtleness is happiness. Grossness of mind is suffering. Subtleness of mind is happiness. We practice shamatha in order to penetrate happiness. If you have shamatha, even you contemplate an ugly object, your mind remains happy. Why it remains happy? Because it remains in peace. Shamatha means peace. So this is the aspect of shamatha, of remembering the instructions. When the mind becomes gross, we have to contemplate the suffering of grossness. Now we have learned about all these hells, all these sufferings of the hungry ghost, the suffering of animals, suffering of humans. These are all suffering of grossness. Now, the gods, especially the gods of the subtle sphere of objects, do not suffer, but they are still in impermanence. The impermanence itself is suffering. So, as long as the mind hangs on the object, even if it is a subtle object, it is bound to the process of impermanence. And the impermanence is the ultimate suffering. The suffering of not having what one likes, of being connected with those one does not like, of losing the company of those one likes, the suffering of the pain, the suffering of losing the pleasant sensation. All these are the skillful means for explaining the ultimate suffering, which is impermanence. The gods do not suffer, but they still suffer because they are in impermanence. They do not suffer as long as the subtle object is there, but when the subtle object disappears, they suffer. So the remembering instructions in the sense of vipassana means remembering the Four Noble Truths. Remembering the suffering of impermanence, the cause of suffering of impermanence, the cessation of suffering of impermanence, and the path leading the cause of cessation of impermanence, of suffering of impermanence. So, as opposed to the tradition of the disciples, the Bodhisattva can combine these two aspects of remembering the instructions of mindfulness in his meditation, even before he has attained the ultimate object. Anyway, we will talk about it in the coming days, if the time allows. Now, what is the third and fourth mistake? We have already explained that all obstacles in shamatha, they are in the Buddhist tradition summarized as 5 nivaranas, wukai. Sensual desire for object of the 5 senses, the anger, sloth and torpor, excitement and worry, and doubt. Now this, in the Mahayana tradition, these 5 obstacles, they are explained actually as 2 obstacles. We have explained that. Sloth and torpor is the obstacle of the mind sinking, Chen, Hun Chen. The sensual desires, the anger, of course, excitement, worry, and doubt, they are the states of the excitement or unrest, pu'an. So, when we meditate, actually all these obstacles boil to 2 tendencies of the mind, either to think or to be excited. This is the samsara of a meditator. Now when the mind is sinking, we have to lift it. When the mind is excited, we have to practice equanimity. Of course, it is not so simple. The lifting and equanimity, they connected with many, many other mental factors. We have to study Abhidharma to understand them. But these are the main ones. So when we practice lifting of the mind, and we put too much effort into this process, then our effort will be non-equal. If we counter the excitement by letting go, and we let go too much, also the effort will not be equal. So because we are using unequal effort, our mind cannot be completely appeased. This using effort and not using effort, actually in yoga, just like in Buddhism, they are technical terms, very difficult to understand, very subtle. The Indian rishis have developed such a subtle language that we have, in a way, no way to translate. Xianzang translate this unequality of effort by Yung Kung Pu Yung Kung, but it is not the ideal translation. In Sanskrit they are called abhoga and anabhoga. Very important terms in yoga also. The commentaries to Patanjali Yoga Sutras have a lot and lot to say on this. Abhoga comes from the Sanskrit root bhuj, which means to bend, basically. To bend, to enjoy. You have learned about the Sambhoga Kaya, the enjoyment body. So, when our mind is concerned with the object, what do? We bend the mind towards the object. And if we bend the mind towards the object with too much effort, we will be excited. If we bend our mind to the object with too little effort, we will be sleepy. And we will lose the sensitivity. The meditative mind cannot lose sensitivity. And it cannot be excited. So when we have overcome these 5 mistakes, we are in the state of appeasement. So the shamatha is explained as a process of transcending these 5 mistakes. And they will only become clear to us when we keep on mind turning inside. So now we have 20 minutes meditation. Try your best. Remember the 4 bases: stable body, so relax first, straighten your, relax so that your spine is straight. Make the gaze on the meditation object firm. Make the meditation object motionless and clear. If you can do it, the all stages of shamatha, the all stages of overcoming the 5 mistakes will become clear. Put the teeth behind the, put the tongue behind the teeth on the upper gum. Try to keep the head slightly bent but straight by leveling the shoulders. Support yourself so that the spine has tendency to remain in the middle, and you support this tendency with your hands. That is mudra, shouyin. Yuan ci gong de pu ji yi qie, wo dan yi zhong san, jie gong chen fo tao. May the merits we have gained spread to all beings so that myself and them together attain the Buddhahood. Thank you.